I feel like I play keep away, pull a fresh on it like Easter Day. If we don't.
Welcome to the Bruce Poinsette Show. This is the world's most dangerous infomercial. I'm your host, Bruce Poinsette, and along with my producer, Ado, we bring you this bi-weekly news, commentary, and interview experience from the Numbers FM studio at the Portland Art Museum. We actually have a studio audience here today, the Dream Bigger journalism students with the Coalition of Black Men. Can y'all make some noise to let people know on Twitch that you're alive? Thank you. So, you catch the full show every second and fourth Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the Numbers FM 96.7. You can also catch clips on youtube.com/Bruce Poinsette, plus exclusive bonus content on patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette. Again, we're live on Twitch right now. You can follow us on twitch.tv/thenumbersfm. That's numbers with a Z. But we begin each show with news stories you might have missed, but should be on your radar. So without further ado, the news. First story comes from the Portland Mercury. It's called Burgerville Workers of Color Call for Resignation of Manager for Racist Actions by Alex Zielinski. Zielinski writes, on July 15th, Burgerville Workers United, the unions representing the chain's staff, filed a petition with the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, signed by almost all workers of color at the convention center store, alleging racist harassment from the store's general manager. The manager has only worked at the Burgerville locations for 4 months, yet workers say he quickly created a, quote, hostile environment with the way he treats his employees of color. Workers say they've made complaints about his actions, yet have seen no improvement, which is why they're motivated to alert the NLRB. Further on, the article, Zielinski writes, this isn't the first time the store's location has been accused of retaliating against its staff. In March 2019, shortly after the convention store workers filed to join the Burgerville Workers Union, managers suspended 2 staffers, fired 1 worker, and handed out dozens of smaller penalties against employees. Since 2018, 5 local Burgerville stores have voted to join the union, which is the first fast food union to be federally recognized in the country. So we highlight this story because, we don't talk as much about the labor fights that are happening, but representation matters. In this case, you had an incident of, racism along the lines of the manager as well as staff. And when you don't have representation, when you don't have organized representation, I can say, then people are left to the whims of management, left to the whims of the corporation, who often they don't care because it's not part of their bottom line. So we'll keep a tab on this story, but again, support unions. Our next story comes from Oregon Live. It's titled, Oregon Sees Year's First Unhealthy Air Day as Research Tracks Dramatic Rise in Wildfire Smoke. And it's by Adriana Gutierrez. She writes, the study by Oregon's Department of Environmental Quality, which operates air monitoring stations around the state, found that central and southern Oregon cities such as Bend, Klamath Falls, and Medford neared or broke records in 2021 for the number of smoky days considered, quote, unhealthy for sensitive groups such as the elderly, pregnant women, young children, and people with lung or respiratory diseases. Currently, 2 fires are burning in southern Oregon's Umpqua National Forest, the Potter and Wendigo fires. Officials at Northwest Interagency Coordination Center, which oversees fires in Oregon and Washington, expect these fires to send smoke into communities east of Hills Creek Reservoir, Oregon Highway 58, Crescent Lake, and other areas north of the Fire Sea. Quote, what we're seeing so far this year is what we have at a later season, whereas last year we were already seeing unhealthy air quality days in Central Oregon and Southern Oregon, Gleam said. So far, it's a more mild and later season, but we still have a good stretch of summer to go. This past weekend was the first unhealthy day we've seen down in Southern Oregon, and we still haven't seen any in Central Oregon. Furthermore, Gutierrez writes, the size of the fires, coupled with the location and wind patterns, ultimately will determine the impact of smoke across the state as fire season continues, Gleam said. The Potter and Wendigo fires are still at 0% containment. That is also the case for the much larger McKinney fire, which is currently burning more than 56,000 acres. So if you've been here, especially 2 years ago, if you remember wildfire season, where it actually turned out it was the first time Portland had such a sustained unhealthy, rating in terms of the air, where you couldn't go outside without a mask or something without risking serious respiratory illness. So we've been lucky. It's August right now. While we've had a little bit of a heat wave, we haven't had, I guess, the wildfire effects up here. Unfortunately, what that means, though, is that they're coming later. So for those of us who, no pun intended, but think we're out of the woods, be careful. Because, again, wildfire season is raging. The McKinney fire especially is raging. And, protect yourself. Our next story comes from Willamette Week. It's titled, "Why Does a Historic Hotel Meant to House Low-Income Seniors Stand Empty in the Heart of Portland?" It's by Sophie Peel. Peel writes, "The Taft home, which stands at Southwest 13th Avenue and Washington Street next to the Crystal Ballroom, is owned by Reach Community Development Corporation, a nonprofit whose mission is to house the less fortunate. It does so with large amounts of financial support from the city and state, and yet since December of last year, through freezing cold, endless spring rain, and the current heat spell, the Taft's 70 beds have served nobody. The building, a 4-story residential hotel built in 1906 and listed in the National Register of Historic Places, is not in structural disrepair. Last July, the state told the Taft it couldn't accept any more residents until it addressed the issues that put residents, quote, at risk of immediate jeopardy and were, quote, likely to cause serious injuries, serious harm, serious impairment, or death to a resident or residents, quote, unquote, documents show. DHS spokeswoman Elisa Williams says placing such conditions on a senior living center is, quote, not routine. It means something going on in there is alarming enough to deem the facility a risk to the very people who call it home. Last year, 24 of the 560 assisted living and residential care facilities in Oregon had conditional licenses. A month later, DHS found the same problems again and threatened to revoke the Taft Homes license. CCL had 2 options: fix the problems or close. Concepts and Community Living chose the latter option. The Taft Home would close for good on December 1st. And further on the article, Peel writes, Marissa Espinosa, a policy and systems advocate for Northwest Pilot Project, a nonprofit that connects low-income seniors to housing, says residents of the Taft are perhaps the toughest Portlanders to find suitable housing for. Many of the residents have a triple whammy of issues: physical disabilities, mental health or mental illnesses, and addiction. They're also poor. So this story is kind of emblematic of the duality of the issue we're seeing in Portland right now, where more and more people are losing their homes, more and more people are living on the streets without the resources. And meanwhile, in addition to having, new developments, these new high-end apartments that often are going unfilled, sometimes being bought up by out-of-state investors who purposefully leave them unfilled so they can stash their tax money, but that's a different issue. You also have buildings like the Taft and other things that did serve some of the most vulnerable populations in the city that are closing for a variety of reasons, whether it's the money to keep them open, whether it's not being able to take care of the issues that arise in these buildings. But the main result, again, is more people on the street and more of these empty spaces while that's happening, creating this condition where we see chaos, and we keep looking at these buildings and saying it doesn't make sense. So, as this article indicates, the Taft is up in the air. Commissioners like Dan Ryan, Mayor Ted Wheeler spoke on it, but there's no concrete plans. And the process of getting people moved into housing has happened for some, but in other cases, which is also indicated in this article, people have chosen just to stay on the street because of, how the Taft was handled, or the fact that the alternatives are also terrible. So it's a sad and unfortunate story, but again, we got to put some real resources towards this because we can't keep trending this way. Our final story comes from OPB. It's titled Draft Rules to Govern Police Conduct in Oregon Leaves a Lot of Wiggle Room. And it's by Jonathan Levinson. So Levinson notes that some of the most notable draft rules are for sexual assault, the default penalty is termination, but if it can be mitigated, the penalty is suspension without pay, salary reduction, demotion, or a written reprimand. Then there's use of justified or excessive deadly force that results in serious injury or death. That one has no mitigated penalty. That one is just termination. What about use of unjustified force or unjustified or excessive force that results in only serious injury or death? The default penalty there again is termination, but if it can be mitigated, you have suspension without pay, salary reduction, demotion, or a written reprimand. And then finally, there's intentionally targeting a protected class. Again, default penalty termination, but if you can find mitigating factors, that could result in suspension without pay, salary reduction, or demotion. And further in the article, Levinson writes, the commission opted not to consider what penalties, if any officer should face if they join a hate group, prompting pushback from the only 2 Black members. Quote, it's really disappointing to see all the law enforcement, how this doesn't seem to be an important issue to you, said Taryn Anderson, a civil rights investigator at Oregon State University, who said he felt compelled to speak up over this issue. Quote, I try to be objective and understand from both sides of the aisle, but some of these things are really troubling, unquote. Williams, a person who was noted early in the article, the other Black member of this board, said it is known that there are officers in the state involved with or sympathetic to white supremacist and extremist groups. OPB previously reported that more than 24 current and former members of Oregon law enforcement had joined the Oath Keepers Militia, a group that recruits people with experience in law enforcement in the military and which played a central role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. So, again, the beat goes on where attempts at reforming police are often held at arm's length. You have a 13-member board with 2 Black members. And even when you talk about suspensions for things such as deadly force, or I should say unjustified or excessive force that results in death, there's still ways where you don't need to get fired for that. They don't even consider They do not consider looking into whether officers are involved with hate groups, which seems kind of wild because I feel like if an officer is involved with Nazis or the KKK, that should probably immediately disqualify you from enforcing the law. A lot of law enforcement people in Oregon don't seem to agree. So again, we try reform, and we get held at arm's length. We talk about defunding, never mind abolition, and we're told we're extreme. But clearly reform isn't working. And that's the news. The Bruce Poinsette Show will be back after this quick commercial break. The Bruce Poinsette Show is made possible by the support of members at patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette. Patreon is a service that allows you to directly support creators like myself through monthly or annual memberships. Become a member for as little as $3 a month and get access to exclusive bonus clips and live discussions. Check out this clip from the page.
Are you defending the prequels? Where does your defense end, Bruce?
So, you know what? Maybe this might surprise you, but yeah, the whole meal deal. I will defend the prequels, kind of. Again, I also had a disclaimer at the beginning that I would not put money on me if I were betting on this as a viewer, but will I defend the prequels? Yes.
If you enjoy this content and believe in the community I'm trying to build, please support by becoming a member at patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette. Welcome back to the Bruce Poinsette Show. I got Donovan Scribes here with me for a B-Block segment, so anything can happen. Or just bad puns might happen. Who knows? Anyways, we do stuff in the suburbs, we do stuff in the nonprofit world, and I feel like we noticed a little trend over these last 2 years since the crescendo of the for lack of better terms, like the George Floyd protests, and it's kind of you see a lot of white people, a lot of white allies, or at least people who fashion themselves as white allies. They're getting tired. They've put in their work. It's been a tough 2 years for them, and it's got me thinking: has the white guilt bubble popped? I'm not sure. Like, what do you think?
Well, I was telling you, if it was a Family Feud, there'd only be one answer. Just do-do-do-do-do. Yes. So I feel like, yeah, if you really think about the totality of the George Floyd uprisings, like it hasn't even been a full 2 years since those came to an end, and still people, it feels like, are like, all right, we put this little thing in place, we put this equity in place, or we put these dollars out, or we had this conversation. So, yeah, it's been interesting. Like you said, even with the work we both do in the suburbs, like for all the time that, like, oh yes, Oregon Episcopal School, where I went to school, it's in the suburbs, one of the, best schools in the state of Oregon. And just trying to get a screening of a film that deals with Black girl in suburbia and have a conversation about investment from this institution that has a lot of money tied up in it, not just through its like actual assets, but like where your alumni end up going to school, where they, spend money with each other, all of these things. Just having a conversation about how it relates not only to the experience that your students, when they come here, are having, but how it relates to the isolation that your institution has from the broader community and how that is a part of racism. It just got rejected. I'm frustrated with that. It's like freshly on my mind, but just thinking about when those protests happened, we was like having these town halls about anti-Blackness. And I remember before the town hall even happened, some of the students there had put together a statement, and basically said, at the end of the day, we're not even sure if OES should be recruiting Black students until there's some, very intense work done to rectify the culture of the school. And it's not like a just all out lashing on the school. It is just saying, like, if you've been isolated in your own bubble for this long, changing some curriculum, having some conversations is not enough, And so I feel like even that statement from the students didn't get the legs, and now we're here talking about a movie screening, and even that doesn't get picked up. It's frustrating.
Oh, but like I'm in the same place where I'm a little freshly frustrated, I'll admit, with stuff in my hometown of Lake Oswego, Lake No Negro, Oregon. And I like to say Lake No Negro because if there's one thing people care about when it comes to racism in Lake Oswego, it's that the name Lake No Negro makes the white people feel bad. They really don't like it. Like, as far as the plight of, actual Black people, it's here or there. But that name. But seriously, like, similar to what you're saying with OES, like, trying to work with the Arts Council to get just like a mural or some public art made by a Black or brown artist. It's if they could find every way, I won't get into all the details. Let's just say after like a 3-year period of trying to do something to, one, bring in more art, two, make the town just less sterile looking. We have to fight on that. With the school district, we just literally just a few days ago, we had a student panel on student resource or school resource officers, and we had the students talk about they had participated in the focus groups that the school district held. And they all said, across the board, students had negative views of SROs. They wanted them out of the schools. When the report came out, the consultant said that students were neutral. Survey says that's a lie. But nonetheless, we had the superintendent on the call talking about how it's fine. They made their decision. She never actually specified why they decided to keep them, but then she just got more visibly annoyed and, starts rolling her eyes at us asking reasonable questions like, the school just did an equity audit, which, I actually advocated for however many years ago. And I was just curious, were SROs in this equity audit? No. Weird. If we're talking about, again, plight of Black and brown students, and one of the number one, if not number two complaints is the cops in schools. So it's weird how that doesn't happen. But again, this is, it's the white guilt bubble. They perform, because really what we're talking about is just barely doing anything.
Right.
Like working up the energy, working up the nerve to hold a conversation, not change a policy, not do anything. Just do almost the bare minimum, pretend like you care. And it's like after 2 years, they're tired. They've put in, like, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but like, it's not just the passive aggressive. People are getting indignant about about how much they don't want to do anymore. And I'd say it's a surprise, but I definitely remember, telling especially young people, in 2020 who were really excited about all the attention this was getting, temper it.
Right.
Like, I hate to tell you how this story ends, but that attention, that spirit, it doesn't hold. You get people who participated, maybe, then they'll drop off. Then maybe they'll like run for office years later and show you pictures of all the marches they were in to tell you they're serious. I love you, Bernie, but that was weird. Anyways, it's this wild thing, like I said, especially with young people, where you have, like, in the suburbs, people operate at like 2 speeds with kids of color. They either pat you on the head or they pretend like you don't exist. And if you weren't like an exceptional athlete, or at least a successful athlete, you probably haven't experienced that pat on the head until 2020. So it's just people operating on like this deficit model and with no expectations, saying, oh my God, I've never been even validated in this way before. Times are really going to change. And then, of course, we get to 2020, we get to 2022, and it's back to normal. It is business as usual.
Right.
It's not to keep ranting on, again, we both got like fresh stuff in this, but, and I might dedicate a whole B-Box segment to just LO because they just do fun things. But I mean, they changed. Like, they used to have kind of a DEI department. They had the DEI director that they then demoted, and then had a director again that they then moved to another position. So there's actually no one working in the DEI department. And then I found out, actually, they even changed the name of the DEI department to a culture of belonging. Now, I'm not sure what comes to your mind when you think, DEI, cultural belonging. But I hear, oh, yeah, that whole diversity thing's a little hard.
Yeah.
And, and then also, again, fresh off of talking with the superintendent, who's saying, actually, instead of having a person do this, we're going to make it the responsibility of, the entire district to do this, which is like, why does that sound familiar? it feels like the same logic when they said we're going to take abortion back to the states.
Hmm.
You know, it's just, but they're proud of this. They feel like they've done enough and that they feel comfortable. Like I said, because they're indignant about it, which is the wild part. And yeah, I'm ranting off here, but again, it's just it's fresh.
Yeah, for me, I look at not that everything comes down to money, but just with this alone, you think about an institution that happens to be almost as old as the state of Oregon, and then you think about the history of the state of Oregon, said not only let's exclude black people from being here and other groups of people, but let's exclude black people from being here. Let's exclude black people from owning land. Let's exclude black people from doing any commerce in this state. And then you have an institution that happens to be basically as old as that. And then the demographics of that institution happen to be majority white and then happens to have a lot of wealth tied up in it. Maybe it doesn't have a harsh history in terms of like, you know, saying no black people allowed in the halls and all of those things. Maybe it doesn't. But what it definitely does have is a whole lot of benefit from the system that said, you know, whites get to do what they want in this state. And that happens to be OES. And just having a basic conversation like, look, the historical black college that I went to that is considered Black Ivy League, Fisk, that school happened, at least at a time, I don't know what it is today, happened to have less financial endowment than OES. Happened to have less. Maybe think about moving a significant amount of your resources and putting it into the black community without expectation of a return in terms of people sitting on your committees, people doing, you know, anything to come present to you all, anything, but just to create a natural relationship, you know, and then over time, maybe those things build out to more. Because right now, when I hear conversations there, it's like, well, we have challenges with diversity. We have an equity person here, and we're having, you know, this person is doing, you know, good work within the institution, but how do we broaden this out? I've been saying the same thing almost for, or some version of this conversation for probably eight years at this point, and just running up against the same version of a wall, you know. And so
But they need to learn.
yeah, and instead we're talking about investment in, you know, board trainings, you know, equity consultants coming in, training our board and things like that, like just investing in the same set of solutions that ultimately benefit, you know, people's comfortability, you know. And so yeah, I don't think what's happening there is actually all that abnormal in a lot of ways. It just might be a little bit more cut and dry, like, oh yeah, we had a town hall, we have, you know, people who are trying to do good work like Chris Reiser there, who was overseeing the inclusion committee and trying to create some conversations. But even in that space, like I voice, like, you know, you have a volunteer group of people right here that is going up against almost 150 years old institution, while its funding sources continue to chug along, while its norms continue to chug along. And then you've got one person who is funded as your equity consultant. You're not going to change too much, you know, with that type of model. So yeah,
It's a numbers game. And
numbers game. You said we were going to do bad puns, so numbers FM, you know.
because you pointed that out,
I had to do it.
Blame
It's
that
right there.
on you.
I saw it.
That's two segments you have crushed today
Yeah.
with these.
This is also, dad jokes. Like I'm moving into that phase of my life
Ooh,
too.
we are going to transition back to the subject. This guy. Yes, it is a numbers game, and what you see is I hate those dad jokes. Like you might have actually like ruined my train of thought.
Hey man, dad jokes, they require like a lot of critical thinking too. That's part of you thinking about, man, how did you get so many layers so quickly? Yeah. I feel like I'm being like
You are
Zoe is over here looking at me all weird.
you are oh god, you're the worst. Ado, please keep this in. No. But yeah, when we talk about numbers, I do think about if all this stuff is left up to the institutions, we keep getting the same results.
Yeah.
They, if they have any kind of like DEI support, it's usually one person who they usually don't pay enough, definitely don't provide support and resources for, never mind like actually setting up departments. But also, like in the case of LO, where you don't even have that, and it's spread out throughout the entire district, what does that mean? Oh, it's up to the same teachers and staff who were doing racist stuff before that had students speaking out, and you have the superintendent, school board basically paying their friends to host these TI workshops and trainings that no one listens to if there's good information to be there to begin with. So it comes down to the community, and I'm going to make what is probably a hopeless plea here, but I'm going to try it again. Because again, I'm fresh off this SRO discussion where you have students talking about how they're being harmed, and then you have a school district being like, well, we decided to keep doing this. And you have white allies saying, they're doing the calculation of like, well, what's the middle ground? Where can we compromise? Well, what if we had more cops of color? Would that do it? No. So, again, I'm going to make a hopeless plea to the allies out there and say, one, neutrality is not a virtue. Look into all the cameras. Neutrality is not a virtue. It is definitely not allyship. Like, this stuff is uncomfortable. Oh well, do you stand with people or not? Are you going to actually do something or not? Because the young people especially need your help. And if you're just sitting there trying to be kind, which I can't speak for OES and Beaverton, but like, I hate the word kind being an LO. Everything is about kindness. Not doing anything, just kindness. It is obviously like kind is a 4-letter word, but like kind is a 4-letter word. We gotta stop that. We should make this constructive, right? Yeah. We should like, well, where can we go now that things have kind of like reset back to normal? Where can we go from here? Well, I've made my plea to the allies out there to stop it with the kindness. I'm not cursing. But what else can be done? Donovan, give me the solutions to the problem. Solve it. Because again, the white people also want to know, and they will come to your meetings and ask you very aggressively why you do not have the solutions. They have taken all of a few minutes out of their day to hear about your black problems.
Solve the problems.
Stop making them feel uncomfortable and tell them the solution.
All right. Well, number one is come to the Kids Outside Festival, August 26th, 6:30 to 8:30 at George Park.
It's going to be a shame if this like runs after that.
Well, and if it does run after this, help us with the Kids Outside as an entity. Help us invest in this park. Help us with whether it's data collection, whether it's showing up to help us with outreach, whether it's whatever we may need help with. This is a self-plug that is really just at the end of the day, Black folks are constantly doing things that are in the benefit of our community that aren't necessarily the shiny thing at the moment, that aren't necessarily getting a whole lot of coverage and aren't necessarily getting a whole lot of coverage consistently. There are ways to plug in and take direction and give actual sweat equity to what we are doing and make room. And if you have suggestions, there may be room for your suggestions and there may not as we continue to build on a vision. So I think, things like that. And I think when, you have people who have invested in, who have been a part of your institutions for whatever amount of time, and they have had, especially if it's a group of people that, whether it's racially, gender, whatever, that have consistently had similar negative things to say about your institution, it may be time to stop acting in the same ways. And it might take a whole lot of, uncomfortability to switch into a new way. It might take a whole lot of investment in a way that you never have invested before. It may mean that, funder that has been sending money to this space for this specific item for this long that you don't want to upset now needs to be upset. It might mean this board member is no longer fit if you're trying to change the direction. It might mean this committee that you have given no teeth actually needs to have teeth. It might mean a whole bunch of things. It might mean that you need to actually be sending some money towards people for the harms that you've done. It might mean a whole lot of different things. But, that's just my take on it. But again, you can come to the Kids Outside Festival, August 26th, 6:30 to 8:30, George Park, if you want to solve racism.
Wow. You could have stuck the landing, but no.
I did. I stuck the landing. Sis.
Anyways, yeah. Get the cops out of the schools.
Yeah.
Just do that, please. We don't need cops of color. That's not the thing. Just get the cops out of the schools. And LO School District, I got more segments coming for you. Don't worry. But with that, Donovan, thank you again. I feel like there's a festival you might be co-hosting. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Sheesh. What did we call it? What's it called? The Kids Outside Festival, August 26th, 6:30 to 8:30.
There you go.
George Park. Take that.
The Bruce Poinsette Show will be back after this quick ad break. BrucePoinsette.com is your one-stop shop for everything Bruce Poinsette. You have my services such as freelance writing and editing, creative nonfiction courses, as well as customized writing classes, event facilitation, and digital content creation. Again, go to BrucePoinsette.com for a quote and make sure to sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss any news or updates. Welcome back to the Bruce Poinsette Show. I got a couple special guests with me, Matt Randall and Donovan Scribes, and they're here to talk about upcoming project or festival they're doing, the Kids Outside Festival. So, yeah, but first off, just how are you two doing today?
Doing great. Blessed to be here, man. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So, yeah, it's at George Park. Can you just talk about what is the Kids Outside Festival? What sparked this?
Man, I think, excuse me, I was performing the other night, lost my voice, so I sound like Jadakiss and Doc Rivers kind of right now. So shout out to them. So the Kids Outside Festival, it was this idea that I had because I grew up across the street from George Park. I'm from St. John's, North Portland. So I always felt like as a kid, it used to be more fun for kids to go there. And I just noticed over my time living there, it kind of subtracted from that in a way. You know what I mean? Like there isn't much to do there now. It's more so of a dog park. So I just, around 2018, 2019, I was just really thinking like, what can I do to give back to the area I grew up in? And, I just started this idea of maybe putting together a show, because I make music. That's the main thing. And music brings people together, brings community together. So I figured maybe we could bring people there, show them that we care about this space, and then from there we could start trying to activate it. And I didn't really have a lot of community work experience, so I just had to reach out to somebody I felt, who could help me drive this force. And I looked to this guy, Donovan, who had me a part of his events in the past. So, just seeing what he's done with gentrification is weird. It really aligns with what is going on in that neighborhood right now, how it's being gentrified really, really significantly. So, I talked to him about it, he loved the idea. And then from there, it just started snowballing. It's been like a 3-year process, but we're finally here at this point where we can actually roll out the event. And from there, we're trying to pass around a survey that's going to, gauge the community's ideas as to how they want to improve the park. So, it's exciting, man. August 26th, 6 p.m., we'll be there.
Yeah, and that's, this is very important, like meshing, one, just like entertainment, but then also I love the idea of actually like polling the community, actually getting ideas for like the bigger picture.
Right.
Yeah. So you can just talk a little bit more about, you talk about just going to George Park as a kid, but yeah, just like what's going on with St. John's right now and like why it's so important in terms of not just doing projects like this, but having specifically like Black men like yourselves, like leading.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, just I left there, I want to say 2014, 2015, moved away, had my son, my family elsewhere in the city. But, I stayed away maybe for like 5 years, and I moved back just to get close to my family who was in the process of losing their house, which is ultimately gone. And there's 3 houses built on that land. So it just points back to gentrification, me trying my best to scramble and save the land, but unfortunately, didn't happen. So I think it's important because the history is being erased, and I feel like my grandma's house was if you ask people like in the underground music scene out here, they have at least come to my house one time to record music there. So, I think that's a big key piece of history that no one will probably know about except for the ones that was really in it. So that being gone, there's a lot of things that are getting torn down and rebuilt and repurposed into something else. So, it's very important for somebody, especially as from there, going back to do something like this. You know what I mean? And it's just a bigger picture because ultimately, the kids outside is just something we're trying to do for the whole city down the line. We think big picture, but, right now we're trying to activate George and trying to make that a place because there's a lot of children out there that I feel like would benefit from having this park. It's in the middle of 3 main schools, Sidon Elementary, George Middle School, and Roosevelt High School. So, it's nestled right there, right off of Fessenden. So it's like, it should be something more than what it is. People don't even know that it's there, and I want it to be seen because it deserves to be. So.
And Donovan, so obviously Matt mentioned that, you've collaborated in the past, but yeah, when he reached out to you about this in particular, what was it that drew you?
Well, at that time, it was right after Nipsey had passed, and, just even thinking about that time frame of why we loved Nip was because of what he was doing for the neighborhood. And it felt like that's exactly what Matt was trying to do for that area. It's like, this is where I'm from. I want to see, something different. I want to invest in this place. And so, I'm always for that. And I think the way that like gentrification happens in a lot of ways, like, yes, it's that, people will come in and invest and just throw something up or tear something down. But another part of what's important is that people's voices aren't, like, the people who are actually from there aren't at the center of it from the beginning. So, like, the vision that he had with the festival and all of that, it's like, we can make sure that as this park is being developed, it's actually being developed with the people that are from the neighborhood. And yeah, the people who are there now too, like, you have a voice. It's a park. It's for everybody at the end of the day. But this is a way that we can make sure that it's done differently. And I think like these different processes that like the city or any kind of like governmental agencies have, like, I think some of them have actually like good intent behind them. So like all of the, the Parks Bureau, they want to have the whole city have where you have parks that are, well done within 15 minutes of every neighborhood. That's like a part of their whole plans now. And they're trying to develop in East County and put more of their funding out there. And that's all well and good. But I think they can also end up missing some things by, thinking that it's all equity equates to East County now, or equity equates to like certain pockets of Northeast. Like by the time George Park was even something that the city put any investment in truth, we probably would be talking about 10 plus years down the line. And so all the things that Matt was just talking about, by the time you get there, the neighborhood has already changed, because you'll see how much a neighborhood will flip over in just a year now. Like stuff will just change right before your eyes. So this is a way that we can say, this is what we heard from the community. This is what we're going to invest in, and have it look like maybe some of the people that they never would have gotten to just by the way we did it. So I'm excited about it.
And to that point, can you just talk about like some of the other partners? And you mentioned the Parks Bureau, but like, yeah, who else are some of the people who are working with you, sponsoring this event?
Yeah. For the event itself, Summer Free for All is a program of the Parks Bureau. So they are taking care of so many of the like logistics of putting on an event, in terms of providing the equipment, the staffing, the porta potties, any of those things that really can be hard to navigate as a 2-person, mostly volunteer team at this point. So they're taking care of all those things. And then Metro, we have a small grant from Metro that has been supporting kind of our work in general. We've also had, who do we have behind us right now? I'm trying to think so I don't miss anybody.
We got Heavy Plays as a food vendor sponsor. We have Sitton Elementary. Nikki Brown Clown's gonna come out and show some support for the kids, and that's gonna be really great. We have somebody that I'm missing. I'm so sorry for blanking, but we have several people involved in this.
LaQuisha, Mom
Yes.
Block. We have
Come on.
Tenacious
Yeah.
Rose.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. But it's a lot of people in collaboration that are really helping us with this, and we're nothing without that support, and we're very grateful for everybody that is helping us.
Joe's Caramel Popcorn too.
That's what I was
They'll be out
thinking.
there. They'll be out
shout
there.
out to Joe's Caramel.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing. I think, I feel like a lot of people don't realize just like how much goes into putting stuff on. I mean, you said like it came a few years ago, but
right. Yeah, I mean, this isn't like just setting up a regular, just like a hip hop show. You know what I'm saying? And that's, I guess, I was naive in thinking that way, at first. But everything starts with an idea. So it just started getting bigger and bigger after that. So we're here now.
And to that point, I just pulled up the flyer here. I see you were performing. I see you also got Jay Prodigy on there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool for like an event like this that, again, it's kind of like, it's very like broader in terms of like it's it's sort of like its appeal, its purpose, but just like spotlighting like the local hip hop scene. We got someone who's been around like you. You got someone who's Jay Prodigy
coming up.
Yeah,
I think that's why it's perfect. We was I actually got the idea from Andre from Friends of Noise, so shout out to Andre for that. Because he's like, it's a fiscal sponsor, with us, and was like, yo, our events involve the youth, so who better to be there, and I just was like, yeah, that's perfect. So I just figured giving Jay Prodigy the opportunity to have a big audience, and I think that's great. That's what it's all about. I wish, and it's big for me because I've never had that many people come out for me that we're expecting, you know what I'm saying? And it's like right across the street from where it all started for me. So it's just like, it just feels right.
And didn't you say you went to school with her mom?
Yeah, went to school with her mom. So, that's what's even crazy. And and Shrista helps manager. So, that's family too. So it's like, it's all a family thing. It's a family event. So who better to have rock with you than family?
Right. So, you mentioned gentrification is weird. You both have your organizations, New Beginning Global. Gentrification is weird. Just for those who aren't familiar, can you both just like talk about what, organizations, brands, initiatives do?
Yeah. I think what gentrification is weird, like obviously it started as a t-shirt, and the thing with gentrification is weird as a t-shirt is as they were circulating, more and more people asked for events to be branded under that umbrella, and so the bike ride that we did from the Villa to Vanport, where I interviewed the mayor right after he had been elected in the Villa, about what he was going to do for Black folks is, a part of the record now, a historical record that we have, and different workshops that people were asking to happen, and even the reform versus abolish debate that we helped put together. It's like all kind of just underneath the umbrella of gentrification is weird. It's not a organization, it's a lightning rod. I just use it like as a branding point for people to pay attention, because it was never meant to be like a full-on organization. It's just a platform that helps usher things along. So I think at points people have been confused and thought it was like some machine, but it really is just a platform that has been developed because people ask for things to be either under that umbrella or help sponsor things that make sense in the community. So that's really what it is, and using it to create conversation around what's happening with Black people in not just Portland, but Oregon at large. So, that's what it's been.
Yeah, and New Beginning Global NBG is it started off as a group of friends, and I want to say my freshman year of high school, it was just me and 3 friends that was in the neighborhood, heavily inspired by, I think, we was just like playing with the idea of trying to be musicians, had no idea what it took to be, but we were inspired by like the groups, the Wu-Tangs, the at the time G Unit, what I'm saying, it was huge, like we loved like 50 Cent and all that, just cruise, just having a cruise. So that's how it started. My boy Mike, my boy Mike P, he came up with the name, and I just kind of kept it going, and it just became a thing where it's like a musical community, and you're free to come and go as you please. We had artists, producers, videographers, photographers, all that under one thing. It's just kind of like Donovan said, an umbrella for creativity. So now, it used to be a thing where I had a bunch of people on it, but now it's more so like myself, and I'm always looking for talent to be a part of it, but it's not really forced. It's more so of a lifestyle at this point.
Right. So I got any final thoughts on the Kids Outside Festival that you want people to know?
Man, this is something that, I think this is like this is going to be the biggest show of my life. And it's just going to be in a way where, it just means more. Like you said earlier, like this is broader. This means more than just some regular night at a venue for 30 minutes or whatever. So this is like something that, and my son's gonna be there, you know what I'm saying? Like we could bring kids there. This is all ages. It's free. It's a good time, and we're there for a good purpose, man. And I get emotional thinking about it, because it's just like, yo, this is something that, me as a man here put together with another Black man here, and we came together on some stuff, and it's just a beautiful thing. And I hope y'all are there, get there early, and let's have some fun.
I think what Matt said, it's gonna be great, and just knowing that this is the beginning,
Right.
Pun intended, new beginning.
Hey,
It's the beginning, because we're gonna be doing this every year. And don't. I heard it.
Keep this in.
But yeah, we're gonna be doing this every year.
Yeah.
And so this is just a seed, and we are looking for anybody who wants to join us in the larger vision of seeing this park come to a different vision. So anybody that wants to come and be a part of it, come to the event, or just hit us up, because we're looking for that help too.
Facts.
Yeah.
Need y'all there.
Man, Donovan, thank you again for taking the time. This is Kids Outside Festival, Friday, August 26th, 6:30 at George Park. Make sure you're there.
Thank you.
And this has been the Bruce Poinsette Show. Make sure to catch us every second and fourth Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the Numbers FM, as well as on youtube.com/Bruce Poinsette. And for exclusive clips, go to patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette and become a member. In the meantime, hey, Black people. Trust me, it won't hurt. See you next week.